I know where there's some, right here in the hall, clerk.
No, Molly, not in there. I have enough.
All right, we're back with the radio and its bearings. Or the radio, the phonograph motor and its bearings. First thing we're going to do is, this has been soaking actually 2 days, so I'm going to pull the excess oil out with a cotton swab. Q-tip is a brand name. Cotton swab. By the way, I don't think I said last time, but I did mention that these might be centered bearings. What I didn't mention was that right here you can see a piece of rubber. Behind that rubber, behind this plate right here, is felt. And the oil, whatever oil you put in here, ultimately gets drawn out to the felt pad that's lying under there, big felt washer. And that will, over many years worth of running, apply a small amount of oil to this bearing, which is all it needs. Bushing, I guess, really. It's not a bearing, it's a bushing. So that one's cleaned out. This one, I still can't get in there, so whatever is in there is in there. One of the things that I mentioned briefly, I think, when you take a motor apart, is you want to look for scuffs on the rotor. This one is very clean and doesn't have any. Scuffs on the rotor means the bushings, one of the bushings or both of them are giving out, and the rotor is starting to wobble inside this housing. So, we have a freshly lubed set of bushings. So we can reassemble this. Like that. Okay. Now we'll put this all back together as best we can. And before I do, I wanted to show you the 2 screws when they're even there. One is quite a bit longer than the other. Where's something white? Yeah, one is quite a bit longer than the other. Hence the three spacer washers. Which means this one was the replacement. The black anodized one was the original. I'm half tempted, but only half tempted, to go down to my local hardware store and see if I can find one of these. But I don't think I will. Either find one or go to the hardware store to find one. Alright, let's put these back in. Okay, we've got this bolt screw to go through there, and this brass offset. Then we've got these bundles of washers that need to go on here. Bundles of 5, right? Which also aren't factory, but they were in there. And once I get it back in the turntable, I'll try to make a judgment as to whether those really should be in there. It's puzzling to me why they would need to be. But like I said, I think before, this might not be the original motor. Somebody Might have had to compensate for this or that. Okay, then our backing plate goes on. I'm going to bring this, put that nut in place just to hold it all together for the moment. Okay. Okay, we'll put this, oops, I have to put a nut on there first. Then that retainer spring. Tighten that down. Now our motor binds. Interesting. What you want to do when you're reassembling stuff like this is, if there needs to be mechanical freedom, it was very free before I tightened it. It's not very free now, but you want to check that. If I loosen these, it's free again. So there's something going on with the You know what? I just realized, remember I was talking about, I'll show you here in just a second. Oop. Knock that onto the floor. Never see any of those things again. Take the backing plate off, put that nut back on there just to hold it in place. When I took this apart, I very carefully marked both bearings, and I did it from up here. And when I put it back together, the marks on this one are on the inside. The pencil mark, it looks like I rubbed the other one off. So what I've managed to do is rotate a bearing. And that may be why this is jamming up a bit. I wish I hadn't used, or I wish I had used something other than pencil to do it with. That's interesting. Right here in the casting is a little nib of aluminum. And when this is up there, the fan, and that's a make sure there's air circulation, actually brushes that a little bit. The fan will sit away from the top of this bearing, but that's interesting anyway. Okay, what I'll do is I'll pull this one and turn it over. Put it back in. Like that. Put this one back in. You see that little corner of metal right there misses once it's reassembled. And I'll reassemble the top part. Put our 5 bearing spacers in. And I realized as I was doing that, these have to be that high because this brass spacer right here is that high. So they've compensated. I believe this is a different motor than the original. They've compensated for this by adding washers to these two, so that this plate fits correctly and level. Put that on there. Tighten these down and see if the motor binds again. It's not binding. So, make sure the orientation of the bearings when you put it back together are exactly the same as they were, or bushings, as they were when you took it apart in the first place. All right. Next comes this piece, and I have yet to clean the rust off that, so I'll do that right now. Okay. I sanded the rust off with a piece of emery paper and put a very light coat of oil on there. I think what I'll end up doing is, well, let me get this into position and then you can see what I'm talking about. Well, boy, that needs the treatment too. Okay, same treatment for that. What I was about to say was I expect I'll have to put a little light grease under here because this slides back and forth. When you shift gears. On the other hand, I don't know if speed changes make that much difference. If it's a little stiff, that may be okay. Okay. Yeah, it's easy to turn anyway, so that's fine. Next comes, and I'll tighten that in a minute, but next comes this hold down spring that keeps this from wobbling around. And then a nut on top of that, which would be this nut right here. Oop. To hold the screwdriver on here. I think that's going to be okay. I'll tighten this one down. Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay, what's next? I think next is this mechanism right here. Little fiber fabric washer came off. This is the pin that holds the big roller that turns against the platter itself. I'm just looking around to see if I've forgotten anything major. I don't think I have. After we attach this spring. But beyond that, it looks like it's all there. I'll put a little drop of oil on this shaft. Oh. The spring caught right where I didn't want it to. Put a little drop of oil in the shaft just to make this turning a little easier. But again, I doubt it's terribly important. And they fashioned the end of the spring nicely so that you can get it hooked into its hole without too much strain, which is great. I was noticing here on this piece there's some shiny surface right there, which usually indicates rubbing. That would be from this edge right here. So I'll just put a drop of oil right there too. Get the excess off. Hook the spring. Fit this on. Okay. I think we're in business. keeper goes back on there. Ah. Pardon my hands. There. Okay. There's another keeper with a fabric washer, as I recall. It goes here, but that won't go on back on until our roller comes back in from Voice of Music. The Voice of Music enthusiasts. Should be in the next day or so. Now comes time to see if the motor runs. Yeah, it's still turning. And I realize I have not forgotten that I have to put that spring back on here, the one that's on the blue tape. So I've not forgotten that. But we'll just see if the motor works. I'll be right back. Okay. I have my this cord, regular power cord, hooked up to my Variac just because it's easy to turn on and off. The Variac's been preset to 115 volts. The ends of the cord are hooked via alligator clip to the two leads on the motor. I flip the switch and this should start. And it does. Very nice. Nice and quiet too. Very good. All right. It makes more noise when it's sitting on the bench because the bench kind of amplifies the vibrations. But okay, I'll put that spring back on and we'll be done with the motor. Okay, the spring is back on. There's not much else to do with the motor until the mounting grommets come in and the big wheel, of course. So I'll put this aside. We'll be done with this for the moment, and see what's next on the turntable itself. All right, at this point we have the motor ready to go back in. I got the spring back on there, no problem. Of course, this bushing thing fits right there, and the rubber band goes from the motor shaft to that bushing right there, which also needs lubing, but I'll save that for a bit. Next, I want to explore this is the manual automatic and off switch right here, and this is the formerly mystery switch right here, and I can tell just by looking at it that what it's doing is, recall this has two turntables, so it has a signal coming from the green one and it has one coming from the regular one over here. They're both going to this switch, and there's some motor stuff going on here, but what this switch does is when you move the speed selector back and forth, this throws the mystery switch back and forth. So I know, just looking at it, that it's making sure that only the output of only one tone arm at a time goes out to the radio. So that's part of it, but it also is doing something with switching here, or with power, which I'm not clear on yet, so I want to look at that. It might be disabling the solenoid right here is the one that fires off the record change process. So it might be disabling that so that you can't automatically get a record change process going. Here, it might be. Anyway, I've got a piece of paper. I'm going to trace that out. But the next thing I want to do in the next video is I'll tell you what I found out about that. But I want to start working on this. This looks cattywampus to me, but it doesn't feel cattywampus. You know, when things usually get bent, they feel funny. Well, they do to me. And that doesn't feel funny. So what I have to do is dismantle this plus the changing tower here, which means starting by taking this plastic panel off, I believe that's true, and lifting that off and getting at the mechanism here so I can see if it looks like it's warped or whether that that shaft happily goes up there at something of a diagonal. So that's for next time. Until then, take care, stay safe, see ya.